So Stephen is the Innovation Director for MBS. So Stephen has played a big part in the developments of projects such as MBS Chorus, MBS Source. He was a project lead for the development of the BIM Toolkit on behalf of the UK Government's BIM Task Group and the Uniclass 2015 specification system, which is a major deliverable as part of the project. We've also got Jeremy, who I think is appearing just now. But Jeremy is from J. Foster Architects, who's an emerging practice delivering refined, crafted and high quality architecture with a bespoke design service. Jeremy Foster worked for Simpson Horn Architects and Eric Parry Architects prior to founding J. Foster Architects in 2014. The practice has completed several projects, many of which have been published and entered to a number of architectural awards. Jeremy will talk to us about Chorus, Excel and Revit and how that helps out in a professional looking specification as a set of tender documents. So that's the real personal experience of using that and using those programmes that are available. But I'll first of all hand over to Stephen for a short presentation.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Can you see my screen okay?
It's just coming up, Stephen, now. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, let's hope the technology works. What I will say is throughout, if anybody has any questions or observations, please pop them in the chat and we'll maybe pick them up at the end.
Definitely. I'll look out for them, Stephen. And if there's any that are pressing during your presentation, I'll pass them over.
Okay, and yeah, hi everyone. Stephen here from Newcastle upon Tyne and the offices of MBS. There's a map of Newcastle from the olden days behind me there. So yeah, today we're going to talk about specification writing. First of all, hear a little bit from myself on the importance of specification. And then I'll pass it over to Jeremy Foster, who'll talk about specification in practice from his experience. And then finally, we've got some sort of useful resources, web links to sort of share. So first of all, I just want to look at a particular, unfortunate, bad example in real life, which illustrates the importance of specification. So this is a project from a number of years ago in Jersey, a luxury new build, a house over £2 million. And throughout the build, the client was unhappy with the quality. There was no specification. I think what was written down was like a work of a standard appropriate to the works, suitable for the purposes stated in or reasonably inferred from the project documents. But without having those project documents, how can you judge the quality if the quality is not specified? So a disaster of a project, the client eventually mounts action and there was damages awarded against the designers in this situation. So I think that's maybe a rare situation, but I'm sure everyone on the call has been involved in projects where there has been sort of disputes and disagreements about quality as the sort of build has started. In this case, the building was eventually demolished. Where MBS started was back in the 1970s, and it was set up by the Royal Institute of British Architects. 3 or 4 architects put together to write exemplar specification clauses for projects with associated guidance and links to standards. And over that sort of 50 years, we've continued to write and maintain research author content, which our users subscribe to. But over the years, we've adopted the latest digital technology to improve the efficiencies and to lower the risk of things going wrong on projects. Now fully online, MBS Chorus platform. So we're going to have 5 short examples just of good specification practice. Have a little look at the words themselves, templates and guidance. When specifying materials and products, generic or proprietary. We look at developing master specifications, reusing them, coordinating the information with your drawings and schedules, sort of cross-referencing, and if you're using modeling tools. And then finally, a little bit about information management and revisions and things. So templates and guidance. This is MBS Chorus on the screen at the moment, but what we're going to do is look at the sort of specification clauses and the technical guidance that go with these. And whatever the outcomes on the project, sustainability, fire safety, accessibility, you've got to make sure that you specified them in the project documentation. So if we look at this fictitious project and jump into the specification, then we're going to scroll down to one of the sections that's already in the job. So we'll look at L10, and you may be specifying timber windows, timber roof lights. There's an example specification clause written by MBS for you to use in your projects, amend and make project specific, but in terms of the timber procurement. So really important in terms of the sustainability agenda, embodied carbon, and where you're actually sort of sourcing your materials from. And you can choose to include all of those rows, or you can cross out the rows that aren't relevant, but it's there as a starting point, so you don't have to do the research yourself because the NBS team have done that research. If we look at another example here, we'll open P12 on fire stopping systems. Another really key strategic thing specified in the RIBA plan of work is fire safety. And you see there's lots and lots of clauses referencing the latest standards on things like fire performance. And again, there is a base template for then you to amend and make project specific on the projects you work on. So different values depending on, say, where those partitions are, whether they're around a commercial kitchen or around a garage in a sort of residential building or what have you. And the final example here, just jumping across to the prelims, so smaller practices having to write the specification, deal with the contracts, contract administrator, the prelims, etc. Rules on things like substitutions. So if you specify particular products, but the tenderers would like this proposed alternative products, what are the rules if that is allowed? Make sure that's written down and agree the tender time so that there's not disputes further down the line. So here's clear rules in the prelims on when substituted products need to be proposed and what evidence needs to be put in front of you so that you can assess the substituted product. Moving on now from that sort of base content, just a little look at the difference between specifying generically or specifying proprietary products. So we look at insulation as an example here. And we're going to specify two different types of full cavity insulation. The first example here, we're going to specify from a proprietary brand. So you'll see in the MBS system, we have insulation from the leading insulation manufacturers with guidance on application, the technical characteristics, third-party certification, etc. At a click of a button, you can specify a particular product from a particular leading manufacturer, and then you just need to make that project specific. So that's when you're specifying proprietary. The other way is specifying generically, where you could maybe say, I'd like the following type of insulation to the following standard, and then you specify that minimum quality that you require. It's such as I would like a proof of evidence of performance through a BBA or a kite mark certificate. I'd like the tenderers to submit proposals, but it must have a minimum of 80% recycled content and a certain level of thermal conductivity. So throughout a specification, you're probably going to have a mix of generic product specifications and proprietary product specifications. All of the content that you find in MBS Chorus in terms of manufacturer specification is also available for free on MBS Source. This is what used to be the RIBA product selector, but you can find manufacturers, details, specific products, or specific product types. So in this example here, I'm looking at access panels, and I want to filter now by products that have certification from a particular manufacturer. And then you can go in just like you do on Rightmove, Auto Trader, Amazon, and compare the performance of the characteristics of the products you're interested in. Chorus users can then add that to the specification. Third thing I'd like to show is once you've written good specifications, using them on similar future projects. So in addition to the projects, you can create masters. This is a Chorus Pro feature, but inside the masters, you might have a practice of 4 or 5 architects. The experts in each subject matter can maintain, like for example here, different partition systems. fill in what's the same on every project, remove what you typically don't need, and then add guidance that supplements the MBS guidance on lessons learned on previous projects. So you've got that information, that knowledge at your fingertips. And when you start a new project, you can copy from the master and push that in to the new project. So you're not starting with something that's maybe 50 or 60% complete. You can really get those time savings and to start with something that's maybe 90% complete and share that knowledge from the more experienced members in your practice with the less experienced members in your practice. So that's comes straight through to the project spec with the org notes supplementing the MBS guidance notes and manufacturer information. Fourth thing, just go through this list of 5 good specification practice presentations. Coordinated project information. So your specification isn't developing in a silo, it's developing alongside the designs that are getting put together. And we have plugins now for Vectorworks, ArchiCAD and Revit, so both PC and the Mac. And you can link the objects in the 3D model with the specification clauses in your NBS Chorus cloud. So as you're doing your design, you can add new things to the specification. You can write the specification as you're doing your design. And you can use that 3D model almost as a sort of table of contents that takes you straight in. So you can see there I've clicked on a door in the model, and I can link that to the particular door type in the specification. So that when you click on it, you see the spec. You can get a report here and say, what have I specified so far? What is still yet to specify? You can do little color codings on the left-hand side if that makes things easier. And actually, Chorus itself can drive Revit or ArchiCAD or Vectorworks, seeing what hasn't yet been specified. It makes things like annotations and scheduling a lot easier, because once the objects are linked to the specification clauses, the codes are already inside the objects. So you can see quickly what's the classification code, they're wood windows, but which ones are type 2, which ones are a type 1. So again, lowering the risk of things going wrong through badly coordinated information and really getting those efficiencies on your project when you're putting together the project documentation. Those links working from the 3D model, from the drawings, from the schedules. And I think the last thing I'd like to talk about is just on the information management as you publish information from the specification. So going back to this project again, jumping to the spec, you can see a history of the various specifications that you've published from the MBS system. So you can see who was the one that published it, what was the suitability, what was the revision, and when they published it. And when you've published future specifications, you can compare with what's already been published. So I'm going to F30 here, and I'm going to add a new clause, and I'm going to revise a clause, and then show how that's actually illustrated in the published output. So I've added clause 6, brand new clause, and I'm going to go down to clause, I think 10 or clause 8, and revise it. So I'm going to change some of the values there in that particular clause. Now, when I send this revision out, you can publish the entire specification, or you can put it in small packages. So for example, here a package just for the masonry. It asks, would you like to compare this with the previous specification? So yes, I'd like to compare it with the previous masonry spec. I save a copy for the future. And you can change some of that metadata. It's a new revision, maybe a new document number. It might have been prepared by somebody else. And this information can appear on your document control sheet. I would probably recommend having a naming convention for the PDF or when you share it on your extranet or common data environment. And you can style it up in Chorus Pro to have your logo, have your font, so it looks exactly the same as your drawings, the same as your title sheets. So you get a very good looking specification document. You do 2 columns or 1 column, get the document control sheet, and you can clearly see now what's been revised, the clauses that have been added as new, and the clauses that have been revised. And that's now a new publication record against that project. So a few months' time, you could come back to that project and see a history of Stephen published that specification. It was a revision to at the following date and time for the following purpose. So what I'm going to do now is pass over to Jeremy Foster, Director at J. Foster Architects. We've not rehearsed this, so I'm going to hope the technology works. But over to you, Jeremy.
Jeremy, before you start, I've got somebody's hand up, so I just thought that might be worth, whilst you get your things all set up, Jeremy, would go to Stephen. Adrian Waters, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question to Stephen?
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Adrian.
Jolly good. That's all very fascinating, but that sounds like big practice to me.
I suppose, Stephen, we knew we were always going to get the questions on costs and things like that, and I'm sure Jeremy will touch on the efficiencies that he's found in practice from it. But the benefit of small practice, and I suppose you've got Chorus Small Works now. I suppose, do you want to just touch on that?
I don't have anything. I can't afford it.
No, sorry, to Stephen. So sorry, MBS have bought out of Small Works. Yeah, no, there's a Small Works version now as well. So I just thought Stephen could maybe touch on that as from an MBS point of view.
Yeah, so yeah, we do have different offers in terms of the content sets. So yes, we do have the large practice offer, which has the full content set, things like green walls and curtain walls and things. We have content for building service engineers, structural engineers, but we have a specific content set put together for smaller works, so works of a simpler nature. And that's what I was demonstrating there. And I think Jeremy's going to demonstrate how that works on small projects now. So maybe pass to Jeremy to. Yeah,
that's fine. Adrian, we'll come if your question's not answered during Jeremy's presentation. I'll come back to you at the end, so we can address it maybe with some of the other questions. Is that okay?
Yep, fine. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adrian. Right then, I'll hand over to Jeremy. Fab. I can see your presentation now, Jeremy.
There we go. Right. So yeah, basically I am a micro practice. So this is from my perspective. I use a sort of BIM workflow with Revit and Chorus. So yeah, these are kind of, premium bits of software, but I basically justify and build that into kind of my fee structure with clients. So yeah, this is just a few things I do and a sort of workflow. That's just a bit of background about me. And really, yeah, I mean, I've been operating since 2014 and have kind of refined this workflow to protect me as an architect, to protect the quality of the build and protect the client, and generally to try and, get a nice result and everyone's happy at the end and there's no awful surprises cost-wise. So, straight into Chorus. So following on from Stephen, so you set up your projects and you have a sort of tab for each of those. So just going into one of these, which is this project, which is going to go to tender. So what I do, I set up the project details, obviously, and I'll do a prelims and a specification, which will be part of the sort of tender pack. And just going into that, you can see the contents of the prelims. These can be, obviously they're written for much bigger projects, but you can just strip out anything that's kind of excessive or redundant. But it's useful to have some of that in just to manage sort of levels of quality and expectation and standards and things like that. And again, with the specification, I just keep it sort of quite minimal, but you'll see why this is set up in this particular way. And it's, again, the kind of cause work sections which go in there. And just going into one particular section here, so this is L10, so the windows and roof lights. And as Stephen alluded to, so the MBS source has sort of replaced product selector, and as that becomes more fluid, it's quite well synchronized with Chorus. So I think it's not quite at the point, but it's almost there where you can drag and drop products, and it will actually populate the clauses for you for various, windows or doors or whatever it might be. So yeah, on the right here, you'll see a list of these are products within Chorus, but what you can do is then go into source, which is via just a web browser, and then you can add a clause and populate a clause that way. And what I, again, tend to do, and this is, you'll see this later, but you can set up hyperlinks within the specification. So this is quite useful for getting clients to sort of sign off products, because obviously for them to sort of type in something and search for it, you can just take them straight to the product page. And again, the sign off process is something that's quite kind of critical in my workflow. So yeah, any sort of visual items, you know, handles, hinges, trims, all the nice stuff, lights and sockets. So again, just building up a spec within Chorus, there's a sort of code and colon sort of prefix you have to use to just filter by a work section code. And what I'll do as well is add notes, and I guess this is more useful in a practice where maybe you've got a few people working on a single specification, but you can sort of, again, things like adding client comments or to-do lists. I think this is one of the more advanced features actually, but that's quite a powerful feature because it sort of associates it with each section or each clause. And again, just following on from what Stephen had shown, the outputs of Chorus are very similar. So if you're familiar with NBS building, you publish a specification to Word or PDF file. And the feature that was missing for a while, but is now thankfully there, is the export financial summary. And I'll go into that in more detail because that's quite key to how I run my projects. And this is just a specification that's come out of there, so a PDF of that. The template feature, again, I think that's in the sort of more premium Chorus, but that's quite powerful. And again, you can get your practice logo and basically tailor the document so it matches your sort of brand guide. And again, just a content sheet. So this is just the specification contents I'll have. And the preliminaries. And again, some of these you can probably strike out, you know, if it's a very small project. So the projects I work on are sort of between 50K and 500K, but it sort of works pretty well for that range. So yeah, this is just the financial summary. So when it comes out of Chorus, you basically just get 2 columns. So you get the codes and you get the headings, which kind of combines it with the prefixes as well. And what I tend to do is format that into a sort of pricing schedule. So again, on the projects I'm working on, there is no cost consultant. So I will tender it and get it priced and manage the tender returns, do like-for-like comparisons, and then turn this into a evaluation schedule to track the cost to the end of the project. So it very quickly, and depending on how detailed your specification is, you can get kind of line by line sections and then the sub items. Some of these are obviously just notes, they're just comments or they're just included. But generally, when you want a contractor to price a line item, I'll kind of highlight it. I'll make it as easy and legible for them as I can. If you want to do supply and fix separately, then I'll double up the lines, and that's kind of the whole document there. Then, so that's a whole pricing schedule for a project that's going out to tender this week, hopefully. And just from a previous project, that is what the valuation schedule looks like. So that is basically the pricing schedule, but then multiplied over, this is 20 weeks. So this was a 20-week program. And again, everything at the bottom here was sort of below the line. So additional items and instructions which were tracked, and you can see how they kind of grow chronologically. And then the contract sum is tracked as that increases or decreases depending on what was added. So yeah, this is just the project which is going to tender, and this is looking at specific link to then Revit. So this is a a kitchen, so it's a number of joinery items. There's hobs and extracts and some other mechanical sort of items and a bit of lighting. So from within Revit, you open a Chorus browser window. So MBS have a plugin for, I think, ArchiCAD and Revit and a few other bits of BIM software. You associate the object with the section and the clause and tick that, associate it. And then that's done. And then that moves to the associated column here. And it will also flag up issues. If you've got kind of naming sort of mismatches, it will kind of highlight that. Again, just a different view there. So you can see the tags are starting to call out the specific MBS clauses. So as you populate the model and associate it clause by clause with Chorus, it becomes quite a powerful thing, because then you're cross-referencing that from your model and on your drawings. So that's tagged there. Again, as I was saying about the prefixes, so what I tend to do is have a kind of 4 or 5 character prefix which matches the specification with the model sort of call out. So it's just a case of making sure that they're consistent. Again, electrical items, so this brings up another category here. So I've done the casework, which is the joinery, and then electrical fixtures. So these are the Revit categories. And again, associating the joinery. So then there's a bit of blurb here, which is just about what the materials and kind of fittings are. Again, this is fairly bespoke, but if there's something off the shelf, then you could drag that in from source. And this is what it ends up looking like once you've gone through that whole process. So you tag everything, everything's got a clause associated with it. And there's no issues. So that's kind of one section done. And then what I'll do is do that for the whole project. And really, this is the whole kind of suite of tender documents. So from Chorus, you'll get a specification, I get a pricing schedule, and then the set of drawings, which is there, which are then all associated with the specification. And that's really it from me.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. That was fascinating and great to see it actually in practice and how you're using it with Revit. We've got a few questions that are coming in, and I don't know, Jeremy, if you want to maybe address Adrian's question about using it on really small projects and whether it's beneficial. And maybe when you started using it, did you start using it straight away as soon as you went into practice, or was it something that you decided to take on and have seen the efficiencies grow from?
No, I did. I mean, when I started, it was back in the days of NBS building, and I definitely did start using it straight away. But that's kind of my background in practice and my aversion to risk, and well, basically trying to protect myself and, as I say, the product and the client. So I think we all agree specifications are important. I mean, it's just up to you how you produce them. You can either get texts that are carefully researched and relate to the current industry standards, or you can sort of make it up yourself. But I definitely prefer the former.
Yeah, definitely. I think aversion to risk is something that's quite inherent in architects as well, actually.
Yes.
We had a question earlier on, but we've had a lot about costs, Stephen. Yes. And I don't know, or Jeremy, and you know, the obviously, Jeremy, you managed to factor it into your practice. So I suppose how would you do that? And then Stephen, if we just come to you and talk about the cost of it and that as well, that would be great, because I think everybody wants to hear about it.
Well, as I say, I have to, you know, it definitely, you know, it is a more expensive product. I think anyone who remembers NBS building was sort of priced maybe a bit more economically. But yeah, I have to just factor that in and pass on some of that to my clients via my fees, because it's an essential, for me, it's an essential product. I don't believe, I mean, there may be alternatives out there, but it's kind of the market leader. So, Stephen. So yeah.
Thanks,
as I say,
Yeah, sorry, I'm on the product development side, so I'm not really involved in the sort of setting the pricing. But I think what I'd say is we've got two large development teams working on Chorus and Source, and we've also got the content development team, which is architects, engineers, quantity surveyors that are researching the standards that come out and all day, every day, maintaining that large content set. I do have a few resources to sort of finish off on in terms of the slide deck. And some of these are whether you're using MBS or not. I think that the idea of the session is more on good specification writing practices more than just this is a particular tool, but we do have specification writing CPD as part of the RIBA CPD.com. And there's an article on our website that will, it's like top 10 tips on writing specifications, whether you're doing them yourself in Microsoft Word or using NBS Chorus. I think this is a really good article to read that's built up over the years. For those of you that already do use NBS, we do have an online training platform called the NBS Academy with lots of tips and a user community and things like that as well. And for those of you that do want to know more, maybe do want a discussion over price and speak to one of my colleagues in the sales team, the Small Works offering, NBS Chorus Small Works, is probably the most relevant for emerging practices, and we can drop that website through. But please, I think there's quite a lot of chat there. I'll go through it now and read all of the comments. Happy to sort of reach out on a Teams call or an email if we need to go into more depth. Please visit our website. This is our email if you want to ask a specific question. But yeah, thanks very much, everybody. Today, back in your hands, Rebecca.
That's fantastic. And there is a lot of chat, but actually that's what today's all about. It's all about knowledge sharing, people listening and learning from, you know, the people that are attending as well as the people that are speaking. So that's absolutely fantastic. And, you know, it's great to hear how many people are using Revit, Vectorworks, AutoCAD, and obviously your program, Stephen, plugs into all those things. So, you know, it's still relevant to everybody here. I think we had a question earlier on about it referencing within the NBS different British standards, and obviously then they're behind a paywall as well. But I suppose as architects, you were saying, Jeremy, about being risk averse, we need to be designing to those British standards anyway, whether we're referencing them in the specification or not. So they're still relevant whether they're behind a paywall in NBS or they need to be bought by you as an architect. Jeremy, do you go through and do you read all those the BS 300 and everything that it references to? Or do you just have them and have to design to them as an architect anyway?
I mean, I have done in the past. I don't actually read every BS as it's revised, but maybe I should. No, I mean, it is just being aware. Yeah, if there is a product or a particular process, just being aware what the current standard is, and what responsibilities you as a designer have, and just making sure you've got the expertise, the knowledge, and the experience with whoever is delivering that particular. If it's a specialist subcontractor section.
Definitely, and yeah, I know it's a thrilling night in reading all these British standards, but sometimes I suppose we have to keep up to date with these things.
I think it's not just about citing the standard, but it's obviously the level in the standard as well, whether you're after a certain acoustic performance or durability or fire performance. It's not as simple as saying just 2 BS 1, 2, 3, 4. It's grade 2 within this, or acoustic grade 3. And sure. I think manufacturers, most of the large manufacturers have really good technical teams that will help guide you as well, because they want to be specified. So looking through the content in NBS Source has some great contacts that you can get free advice off the manufacturers as well.
Well, sorry, I was just going to add so obviously with the level of specification and the projects I'm on, it's whether with the bigger project you might have, it'll be performance specs, or it'll be prescriptive or descriptive. So there are kind of different levels of specification anyway. So it's, again, what you're echoing what Stephen says. You're either going to the nth degree and specifying the nails and the spacing and the actual material thickness, or you're just saying it is just a gas housing box or a window that opens. So yeah, it's just, making sure the level of specification you're going into as well.
Yeah, and that's appropriate to the scheme and the fees that you've put forward and to what the client's asking for as well. I think that comes into account a lot when it taking on and putting those things together on each individual job, because they are so different when we do that. Michael, you've got your hand up. I don't know whether you want to unmute yourself and ask a question.
So my question was to Jeremy. Very impressive specification there and schedules of costs and everything. That must be very time consuming. So your fees must be quite high to cover that time. And, in terms of the cost schedules, I don't know where you find your pricing from to actually do that. I mean, and do builders understand it? Can they work to that to actually price the job?
Well, I don't put the prices in. Yeah, they populate that. But I just give them a column. I mean, it's sort of based on, I think it was a template from probably SpecMan way back when. So yeah, it's just a rate, whether it's linear meter or area cost.
Okay, yes, I thought you'd actually price the job.
Yeah, no, it's literally quantities and rates. That's all it is.
Right. Yeah.
And what I'll do, I mean, on projects, if it is, if they're particularly struggling, I can sometimes, although I don't always offer it up, is offer up some of the quantities, because that's coming out of the BIM model as well.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, thanks for that reply.
That's great, Jeremy. And I suppose it provides all of the people that are tendering with the same template in order to then submit back. So you've got a real, evaluation of cost is all based on the same format as well.
Yeah, the ideal is to get the like for like comparison, but they don't always follow the template.
No,
sometimes they'll have their own in-house template which does it back to front. And anyway, yeah.
Oh dear. Right, well, we've only got a couple of minutes left in this session, and just there's quite a lot of chat going on about pricing and costs and different costs that have been put on. I'd really encourage you to get in touch with MBS if you're interested or want some information on it, and to look at that writing a specification link that Stephen put up, because that is really interesting, and it's got some really good points in there for everybody as well. I think we've covered most of the questions, because I think everything else has put in. But I suppose, Stephen, it'd be really good for you to have a look at this and maybe take back to MBS some of the comments have been made, because it's great to hear, maybe whether there's a range of options, monthly cost per annum, different service levels, people that have used MBS building and things that they liked about that. So we can put some of those together for you as some great feedback for MBS as well. I just want to say a massive thank you to Jeremy and Stephen for such a fantastic and slick presentation. And if you've got any questions or anything that have come out of this session, I'm sure Stephen will be able to take those back for you.